was the female role model, whether it was a man or a woman? Who was the role model for you when you were younger that taught you that women should be treated equally?
It was my nan.
Okay. What did Nan do?
She was just, she had the quintessential role in those days of being the housewife, bringing the kids up, but she was just, yeah, it's really hard to explain. She was just incredibly just and in her approach, and she always taught me and my sister really that we could do anything we wanted to do, I suppose.
I suppose from my dad, who was always, I'll say it myself now, he used to say, happy wife, happy life. And he was always, you know, you should always put, behind every great man is a great woman. And in the day, women, most happy relationships, most successful relationships, the woman's mainly the boss. I know blokes don't like to admit it, but I think that's true. And I think from any long-term relationship, the ones that don't work out are normally the ones where the blokes don't want to listen to the missus, and that's when it goes. My dad's advice to me was just always listen. Whoever it is, your mom, your wife, whatever, but always treat each other equally and always take on their advice and listen. It's my household, I'm definitely 100%.
Awesome. That's really cool. It's nice to hear that there was like men telling you that girls are important and stuff, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know, for me it's kind of I suppose mostly it'd be my gran. I was kind of brought up quite a female dominated environment because my mum was a single parent, so primarily it was me and her, and then obviously I've got a really close relationship with my gran, so kind of for me it was being brought up in that environment by women. I suppose you build that respect anyway, and it kind of that informs your viewpoint of the world. And yeah, and I think for me my relationship with my gran is very close. I've always kind of looked to her for advice and things like that, and I think in some same ways to your nan, but probably not quite in maybe the same character, but she's just kind of got on with things. She's been the one that's brought the kids up. She's been the one that's kind of, you know, like what Adam said, she's the strong person behind my granddad. And yeah, so for me that's kind of where I suppose my perspectives come from.
I think mine's the same. Like mine's definitely, if I think about strong women, my mum always told me I could do anything, and she was a single mum again, like, you know, I believe in you. But it was my grandma who, she wasn't running around telling women they could do anything. She just sort of got her head down and got on with it. And I think when she'd tell you about being sort of 14 years old in the Second World War and helping with like air raid duties and stuff like that, just, you know, I think that was the generation when women really started coming out of sort of their gender roles, didn't they, and started obviously helping with the home effort. And I think that's what started to change that perspective. It's really interesting that most of us are talking about family as opposed to, I suppose, people outside. Alex, is it the same for you, or?
Yeah, probably. Like my mum and dad, they had very like traditional roles. Like my mum stayed at home, my dad went to work, my mum did all the housework. But my grandparents, because they were both retired, my granddad did like some of the washing, like cleaning, shopping, and I thought, oh, it's not traditional. Like that is like normal, I'd say, more so now. So yeah, pretty similar.
I think it's funny. My nan, probably the first female role model, but it's actually, thinking about it, it's my sister really for me, because she was the first one in our family to go to university. She's the first one who challenged every single stereotype connected to females. You know, yes, she's got a family and stuff, but by God, does her husband do 50% at least of the childcare, and you know, nothing stops her from doing what she wants to do. So I think, yeah, it's funny. It's only that there's someone so relatively close to me in age that is actually that role model.
I was just going to add, I suppose as well, like my primary school years and probably most of my teachers were female, and I guess that's probably, I don't know whether, I suppose women are more likely to become teachers anyway, aren't they? Statistically, maybe. But yeah, certainly, obviously, when you're being taught by females, and I think kind of strong females in the school environment and stuff, it just all adds to that kind of environment that you're growing up in.
You know, isn't it? Because your teachers were mostly female, but the head teachers were mostly male.
Yeah.
Senior leadership tended to be mostly male.
Yeah.
I'd imagine public schools were more male dominated by teachers as well, like the private ones or something like that. But,
yeah, because the salaries, let's be
Yeah.
honest, I think particularly when we were younger people. Yeah, that's really interesting. I wonder if that dynamic's changed. I wonder if you get more female headmasters these days.
I've seen a lot more, like when interacting with schools, a lot more of female and leadership as well.
Well, at the moment, we've been looking at schools for Jude in September, and every school we've been to, it's been a female headmistress.
Interesting.
Can I ask a question, just in terms of, as women, did any of you feel pressured to have to go in a certain direction with your career because of your gender? Like, did you feel you had to do certain types of role and some were out of reach?
A little bit, I'll be honest. I think for me, though, it's more that you have to work harder to prove yourself if you're a woman in any job. And I think, I don't know if that comes from society, if it's internalized, but I feel like I have to oversell everything I do because of my gender a little bit, to almost prove that I'm not going to be an emotional mess, or, you know, I can control my thought patterns, or whatever it is, that I'm not worried about, you know, my next haircut. I'm more worried about my job and that sort of stuff. And I think that's quite a challenge, because it gets a bit tiring. It's getting better, but when I first got promotions and stuff, when I was like 18, 19, people would say to you, oh, who did you shag to get that job? And you're like, I just worked hard, you know, but people will assume you were getting your leg over just to, you know, earn an extra £1.50 an hour or something. It's silly though, isn't it? But that definitely happened to me. I don't know if it was the same for everyone else.
No, I don't think I've ever really experienced it. The only comment I could make is around like the mental health of like women is kind of stigmatized in the workplace, but all the workplaces that I've worked in, it's always the males that have had the mental health like issues, and it's been publicized to the team. But I don't think I've ever felt any pressure.
I think the only pressure I've, not from what career choice I've made, but the only pressure I've really felt is when you become a mum and you have parental responsibilities, it defaults to the woman all the time, and your career takes a step back, and it has to. And you know, and I don't begrudge that, and I absolutely adore my kids, but it's hard when you go off on maternity leave because you're overlooked, and then when you come back, you have to juggle that mindset of being in your career and working really hard, but then realizing you've got actual limitations because of childcare issues, or because you're so tired because your child was up all night, or so it's hard. That was my biggest thing, and finding an employer that was supportive of that is, I didn't find one, which is why I started to work for myself.
I think that's definitely the thing is, with this day and age as well, you can't afford for the old traditional where one partner goes to work and one stays at home and looks after the kids, because you need both incomes, because life's just so expensive. And quite rightly, like you said, Jane, I know from experience at home, my missus is like the same. She's got a high position in her job as a director. She works 3 days a week, but they expect her to do 5 days. You know, she has to do absolutely everything she did before, but plus she's still got to look after Jude. And let's be fair, if Jude was ill, she would be the first person to look after him, because it falls down to her. But it's a hard balance, because you want your career, but you want your kids, and it's, yeah, I'm glad I'm a bloke, put it that way.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because I mean, I see it from both sides, obviously, as an employer and as a mum, and it's getting that balance is so difficult, because you can't give people extra dispensations just because they have children, because that's not fair on people that don't. You know, I was talking to a friend the other day who works for a major bank, and she was on a call, and the manager on the call basically said to the people who were on there that had kids, oh, you go off and have the afternoon with your kids, because obviously you're not seeing them very much at the minute because we're so busy. But the ones who didn't, i.e. my friend, she didn't get the afternoon off. And it's difficult, isn't it? Because employers want to be supportive and all that, but equally it has to be done in the right way, because ultimately you still have a job to do, but also it has to be fair for those that don't have kids or don't choose not to.
Is that quite a challenge as an employer then, finding that balance? Like, would you want to, if you could, I don't know, change the law around paternal leave and things like that, do you think that would help?
I guess it depends on, it totally depends on the workplace, on the job, doesn't it? On what that person's role and responsibilities are. Because if their job can't be flexible and it has to be, then you can't really, changing the law doesn't help, because all it does is potentially make that person impossible for that person to do that job, because the employer wouldn't employ them.
It comes down to that balance, doesn't it? I think there has to be an expectation. If you're a parent and a female parent, you have to be able to find a balancing point between those two responsibilities if you want to maintain your career. I'm not saying that's fair, because ultimately males should take more responsibility and more accountability, but ultimately that's a societal kind of, it's deep-rooted, that kind of, it's almost like we fall into those kind of roles, don't we, whether we choose to or not. I think a lot of the time it's almost becomes expectation, and I think probably work has to be done around that. I think men have to take more responsibility for that. But in the same instance, if in a workplace, you've got to understand, if you want to have a career and stuff, then you've got to be expected to be treated the same as someone like Jane said, it doesn't have kids, because it's not a free pass, is it?
You know, it is hard, but it's kind of, that's ultimately, as a parent, they're the sacrifices you make, aren't they? And you acknowledge that when you go into parenthood. It's just, you're going to have probably 10 years of pain going through primary school and, you know, all that childcare issue, but then hopefully you're home and dry once they get older. It's difficult.
I was going to say, for you as well, is, I guess, having someone that works kind of regular shifts and things like that makes it even harder.
Really hard, yeah.
Because there's nobody there with like a 9-to-5 regular job that you can work around. You've got to be flexible all the time.
No. And I guess that, you know, a lot of jobs nowadays aren't 9 to 5, are they? A lot of people work shifts and antisocial hours, and it's a massive juggling act. But yeah, the expectation that I think women put on themselves to be that first point of call is, like you said, Ad, with Sarah, is that probably if the school rang you first, you'd go and get Jude, but Sarah wants to go, and I totally get that, because she's mum. But equally, you might get some dads that want to go, and I think it's just workplaces have to. I think there has to be that honest and frank conversation between employee and employer, doesn't there, about what their remit is and responsibilities are, but also what their pressures are.
Sorry, but in terms of that split between career and mother, is that a lot of guilt to manage as well, in terms of that balancing act? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's huge. I mean, it is massive. I think for any parent, when you go back to work, it's really difficult, but especially when, you know, when you want to be able to do stuff, but you can't because of career commitments. But again, it's pressures I think we put on ourselves, isn't it? And it's like, I don't know who said it, but if you choose to have that career, then you choose to take the pressures of that career, don't you? It's like any job, really. If you want to have a high-flying, high-paid job, then you sell your soul a little bit, don't you? And that's what you have to do. And if you don't want that, then you choose a job that isn't high-pressured or high-powered. Can I ask a question? Is that okay? So you guys work with Chris and I. Would you feel more comfortable coming to me with an issue, or going to for a certain issue, or would you go to either of us regardless of the issue?
I'll go to either regardless.
Yeah,
I think it might depend on the issue.
Yeah,
because it's a bit more personal.
I'd be comfortable speaking to either of you. I think it depends. Like, if you're both right, I mean, I'll be honest, if it was something related to being a woman, I'd probably go to Jane, because I wouldn't want to make you uncomfortable. I think that's.
I thought you were going to say you'd probably go to me.
Well, no, I mean, if you want to have a chat about my period, we can. But, you know, I don't feel like that's what men in business want to be here. That, again, reinforces this whole women are weak, women have emotions and problems and cycles, and they're a nightmare. So I think that's why you don't talk about those things with your male bosses. But I've had male bosses and no female to go to before, and you just tell them. You know, it's up to them, isn't it, how they respond, I suppose. So yeah, I think we're both approachable.
And it doesn't affect what you've come to us with, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at.
I mean, like, if I found out I was pregnant and we were going to have to start planning some mat leave and whatever, I'd just phone both. Because it's both of you and it's both of your business, and you do this. If we come to one of you, you both have a little chat and decide what you're doing anyway. So it's just easier, isn't it, to just tell you.
It's actually a Siamese twin.
Well, you may as well be.
Alex, you're the oldest serving member of staff.
I would go to you, Chris, at anything like mentally, like mental health, just because I have before. And I know to come to you over Jane. I'm not saying that, Jane, you wouldn't be supportive over it. But do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I would equally come to both of you if I had a problem. I wouldn't go to one of you over the other.
Has anyone ever told any of you that you couldn't do something because of your gender?
I was walking into the ladies' toilets at Tesco the other day and
That's fair.
joking.
It's the same for boys though, because some, you know, you're told you couldn't be primary school teachers or nurses or whatever without being gay and all those kind of, you know, side assumptions if you're a man that's doing a female role. So I don't know, did you want to be a nurse when you were younger, Chris, or, you know, seamstress work, Adam? I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I never really knew what I wanted to do, to be honest. Hence why I joined the army, because I was lost and didn't have a clue what I wanted to do with myself. And my dad was like, "You need to do something. Go and join the army, and they'll sort you out." And I suppose they did, really. Give me a purpose, give me discipline, give me a drive. Made me realise that, you know, as humans, we can push ourselves a far lot more than we think we can. That's probably the only criticism I'd say about my wife, bless her, is she's had such a sheltered life that the smallest things could throw her off. When really, you know, bless her, I took her running once, and because she was out of breath, she thought she was dying. Because she'd never been out of breath before, and it's like, this is the point. You know, she would never push herself. Jude's a bit like her. He has to go such a slow pace. He will never just run at something, and she's the same. Unless she knows that all the angles and what the outcome's going to be, what's it down the road, she won't just go for it. And I think that's one thing I learned when I was in the army, is that we're not, you know, fragile. There's a lot more that we can do. We can push ourselves to the point beyond that we ever expect. Now, I've seen people pass out and then they've just picked them up and drag them along. You know what I mean? But that's what it's like. And I think that gave me the drive that I've got now. Whereas if I've got something to do, I'll just get it done. But I do find it frustrating when people aren't like that.
Chris, what about you?
No one. I think it's difficult. My dad always like wanted me to go into a certain type of career. I think you kind of subconsciously pick up kind of what society or what people around you think you should do, or what. But I've never felt anyone say. I've never felt in a position where I couldn't do something if I didn't want to do it. Certainly because of my gender. No, I don't. No, you.
It's good. It's nice. I don't know if we're talking like, it's unusual, because usually when I speak to a bunch like this, I'd say 4 out of 5 have had significant either toxic masculinity experience, or, you know, just issues with being treated badly as a woman or whatever. So it's actually really refreshing to sit down with 4 people that are like, it's not really bothered me, it's been all right.
I may well have experienced it, but have completely ignored it. Because that's what I would do with that. I'd say the only negative behaviour I've had is probably from other female managers. I don't. Some women don't like other women in leadership, do they? So I've experienced that, definitely, but it's not from a male point of view that I'm aware of or paid any attention to.
How would you challenge that behaviour then? If we saw it come up in TTI, how would we plan to challenge that, do you think, with staff or learners or whatever?
With males towards women or women towards women? Either
way, I think, because it's a thing, isn't it? I think gender equality is a two-way street, whether you're a man or a woman, and talking about men or women, it you know, let's stop saying that boys can't cry, and let's stop saying that girls are a nightmare, because every person is individual, aren't they? It's not really anything to do with your gender. So
I think some bad behaviour like that really comes from ignorance, doesn't it? A lot of the time. And I think we're a values-based organisation, and those values are kind of embedded throughout probation reviews, performance reviews, aren't they? Activities that we're doing as an organisation. And I'd hope to think that we would identify that sooner rather than later before it negatively impacted on others in the workforce. I think if there were episodes of it, then it's an honest and frank conversation with the individual, because it wouldn't be tolerated.
I think it's that thing, like you say, the first time it happens, it comes from a place of ignorance, but then it's challenged, and if it happens again, do you know what I mean? It's kind of, then it's more than just ignorance. So people, it's really difficult in modern society, isn't it? You know, there's this whole thing about the woke culture and all the things that's developing, and equality of opportunity and equality of, you know, saying the right thing, it is challenging, because someone can always take offense to something, and sometimes it's justified, sometimes maybe not, things like that. But I think as long as you're all coming from a genuine place and you're respectful of each other and things like that, and you're building those work relationships, then it shouldn't be an issue. I think if you've got, it's very, certainly in an organisation of our size and stuff, it'd be apparent very quickly if someone was kind of behaving in that way. I'd like to think anyway, and I'd like to think people feel they could speak out against it.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing, really, isn't it? Is if there is bad behaviour or something like that where someone's being offensive, I would hope that everyone in the organisation is confident enough to say to that person, you know, it's not right what you've just said, actually, and not always taking it up to us to deal with, because actually it affects everybody, and it shouldn't necessarily be for us.
Self-policing, isn't it, sometimes? Because people can say things sometimes that's either taken in the wrong way or just really badly misjudged. Doesn't mean they're racist, doesn't mean they're sexist, it just means they've said something stupid. And I think that's the kind of, it's almost like, hopefully you've all got relationships with each other in the organisation and the team's strong enough, like if someone does that, to take someone to the side and say, look, that wasn't right. But then if it does become a continuing issue, then it's something that needs to maybe be dealt with kind of higher up the chain or something. What do you guys think?
I mean, yeah, I think I'd try and nip it in the bud in the team. I think you're right. I think sometimes it's about paraphrasing what you've heard someone say and just repeating them back to them and being like, is there a problem with that sentence? Because if they can recognise it, then, like you say, it's misplaced words, whatever. But if they go, no, there's nothing wrong with what I've just said, that's what I think, it's what I feel, that's when we've got to have a proper conversation, isn't it?
I think that's exactly. The thing is, you can change someone's behaviour in the workplace to fit in with the policies and the procedures and the legislation, but you can't change personal beliefs. And I think that's the difference, isn't it? If someone has said something that's offensive, it's addressing it and making sure they know why it's offensive and why they can't say it in the workplace. But if they want to think it, that's up to them. But it just doesn't leave their mouth. Yeah. I think that's the thing, isn't it? Because everyone's entitled to their own opinions.
Just not at work.
Yeah, well, yeah, not vocally at work.
In that way.
Yeah.
But it's that, it comes back to that simple thing, you know, speak to people how you'd expect to be spoken to. And I think that's the difficulty, like Jane said, is when someone's got a belief, whether it's informed from their background, you know, their experience, their age, because I think the older generation have completely different experience to the younger generation that are coming through.
Yeah, 100%. My mother-in-law, bless her, she's in the 70s. You know, she still talks about those Muslims and all this. Like, and it's like, what are you on about? You know, they're taking our job. It's like, it's not about that. And bless her, she just sees it. You know, she grew up in Birmingham in the 50s, and it's a totally different place than it is now. It's multicultural. It's something. You know, there was none of that when she was younger, and she just she didn't get it.
It's all, like you say, it's a respect. It all comes back down to respect, doesn't it? And I think trying to think about the other person's point of view rather than just your own.
I do think as a generation, like our generation, like below us and now, a lot more open-minded than we've ever been to different people, different where people come from and their backgrounds and what they believe in. And I think we are a lot more open-minded.
I think as well, people are held to account a bit more, aren't they? Because, you know, social media, freedom of speech, absolutely, but by gosh, people are pulled through the coals if they say something that someone takes offence to. And I think you almost have to be PC. Well, you do have to be PC anyway, don't you? But I think you're just.
Yeah.
You can say what you want, but you can't discriminate against someone else, because then it's hate speech, not freedom of speech. Yeah. And that's the fine line, isn't it? And it's to some people invisible.
Yeah.
That's the problem. And people will use that. I've got a right to free speech. It's like, yeah, you can put your opinions across about, I don't know, cheddar, but that doesn't mean you can give your opinions on racial issues in such an inflammatory way and get loads of people to hate a certain type of person, because it's the same, isn't it? It all comes down to I think it's when people use bias to try and convince people, you know, women are useless or Muslims are dangerous or whatever this horrible rhetoric is. If, like you said, social media and everything kind of almost puts propellant on these things now, and they just run through you know, social media platforms become viral, people will get outraged, and like you say, and then they all start kicking off at the blue tick that originally sent the comment or whatever, and it kind of goes this cancel culture thing. But I think that's gone too far. You know, you don't have the right to shout at someone on the internet because they put an opinion out there in the world and you disagree with it. This whole, like, let things lie, you know, like the grandparents, you know, if you've got nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. I don't know what happened to that. I feel like that needs to come back, really.
The thing is, though, in reality, they would never do that in face to face, would they? It's all these keyboard warriors. You know, it's all right saying what they want behind the keyboard, but in reality, they wouldn't talk to people in that way, and you wouldn't drag people across the coals that way.
I think it's people have lost the art of conversation. It's now a lot of communications taking place in however many characters. And
but to be honest, that's why I've come off Facebook for a bit, because I'm sick of seeing the same thing every day. Life's too short.
No, definitely. I do feel social media doesn't help. I know
No,
it's just to help.
it creates. I mean, like, I never thought, because I'm quite late to the game anyway. I only joined Facebook about 5 years ago. I never even bothered with it. And then, what's that? Well,
just got his first smartphone.
Oh, this is it. I'm never really bothered with it. And then all of a sudden, I'm on it, and I'm like putting photos on. I was like, how many likes has it got? How many this? And it's like, what the hell? What's bothered? And I found myself like during his birthday and stuff like that. I thought, oh, that'd be a good photo to put on Facebook. But now I'm not on there. I don't really care about that. I never realised that I would actually become that person. It was that instant gratification of having liked somebody Facebook. So yeah, so I've sacked it for a bit, and I feel better for it.
You obviously do loads of stuff with social media for the learners, don't you, Alex? Do they notice that all this like instant like and this gratification is a bit of a problem?
I think with the learners that have gone through the Motivate module on social media, they've been quite wise, and it's been quite a shock to see that, oh, I'm not really on social media, I'm only on it because like my girlfriend and my boyfriend's on it. And that's really refreshing to see. I know my brother's generation, well, my brother as friends, he's always on social media, he's always talking about it, and it's worrying to think that they're growing up that way, where everything, their lives just revolves around it. And I know a lot of my friends, they just are obsessed with it, and it's worrying to see that your life depends on this one like photo that you get likes on. And I think it's really interesting for the, I don't want to say older generation, but people in like their 30s, 40s.
All right. Rude. Should we kick her off now?
Yeah.
But they're not really bothered as well. Like they've grown up with, it's this foreign concept to them, and that they're only on it to like stay not down with the kids, but do you know what I mean? I'm really not selling this.
I know what you're saying, Alex. The thing is, it's kind of, the difficulty is when it comes in your kind of formative years, it gets much more ingrained in your life and your, do you know what I mean? So for those people now, or certainly kind of that grew up after social media's explosion and stuff like that, for kids, that's how they communicate and stuff. But I think there's a whole host of challenges there, and I guess bring it back to kind of women and stuff. And I don't know whether, do you find there's a difficulty, or do you find there's any that women are treated differently on social media in compared to men? And how have you kind of experienced that?
I think for women it's more sexualized than men, because they're expected to post like provocative pictures of themselves to get the likes that they want. Whereas men, they're not really that bothered about social media, like, so they're not bothered about the likes. They're there to communicate more so.
It's not reality though either, is it? Like a friend of mine's younger sister, she's classed as an influencer on it's not Snapchat, what's the one? Instagram. Yeah. She's got like 10,000 followers. Like if you look on that, she looks like she's got the perfect life. But reality is she's got 3 kids, she lives at home, her husband's and all this stuff. On the face of it, anyone looking at that would think, oh, you know, that's the life that I want. You've got these kids that are like, she takes photos and poor bugger will have to stand there for half an hour while she gets the right picture. you know, while she's wasting time doing that, she's missing out the time on the kids, and it's not real though, is it? It's not reality. And at the end of the day, you would never put something on social media that wouldn't put yourself in a, you know, if you took a picture of yourself and you look at an absolute state, you don't think, oh, I'm going to put that on Facebook, do you? You know? And this is what social media does to you.
I've going back to what you said, Chris, I've definitely had, I don't really use social media as much anymore. I'm a bit like you, Adam. I got well rid of Facebook about 2 years ago, because you just get in these scrolling loops and you're looking at the same content or the same inflammatory comments, and yeah, just couldn't be dealing with it. And also the thought of like people that you didn't like very much at school, seeing what you're up to, go away, you don't deserve to know. So yeah, but occasionally with Twitter, I'll share certain things, and some people, I've stopped doing it because of this. Generally, men will just jump on you with some random avatar, some random name, so I don't know who this person is, and they're all like, "Oh, it's all right, dear. You need to calm down, darling." And it's like, I don't know who you are. Don't. My name's Tansy. It's in my bio. Like, use it, or just use a. You wouldn't call a man dear and correct his little ways.
You had that person. We were having a trouble with a customer that wouldn't pay.
Yeah, and oh God, I remember that. What did he call me?
Love.
Yeah.
No, it was sweetheart, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah.
that was like red flags for bull, obviously.
So yeah, I have experienced. Yes, that was wrong.
I hate that. Calm down, darling. We're just trying to sort something out. And you're like, ugh, who are you? Like, because they, not to be funny, but they're usually older gentlemen. I don't think younger men think that that's appropriate. And it's a bit creepy as well. It's like
So
you said, it's a bit
condescending.
sexualized, you know. And it's not like my avatar's me naked or anything. It's just a face. Like, it shouldn't, do you know what I mean? It shouldn't evoke that kind of reaction from people. And I always challenge back and say, you wouldn't talk to a man like that. So this conversation's over. Because if you, like you said, the art of conversation, if you came back to me like, oh, it's an interesting point, I don't quite agree with it, let's have a dialogue, fine. But attacking me because I'm a girl and I've got a different point of view is just, it's not okay anymore. And yeah, it puts you off of social media. Not that I'm that bothered anymore, but you know, or you get afraid, a bit like when we put the comms out and stuff on LinkedIn, I'm always worried that someone's going to come along and, I don't know, talk about your face looking funny, or I don't know, oh, you didn't say that word right, darling. Do you know what I mean? And like, I don't need that in my daily life.
I was just going to say, on LinkedIn's an interesting kind of platform. I wondered, because obviously there's things about kind of sexual discrimination in the workplace and stuff like that. I wondered what your guys' experiences of LinkedIn, and whether it's ever gone to that kind of people making inappropriate comments or almost adding you for different reasons than maybe.
That's happened. I've definitely had some strange men start to try and make friends with you. And again, you're building a network, so you add people, don't you? And then creepy creepersons in your DMs being like, hey, and you're like, who the hell? Again, just why? I'm just trying to help a business grow, or I don't know, find a new job or whatever it is you're on there for. And you're getting harassed for just, I don't know, trying to crack on with your personal and professional life. It's not as bad, I don't think. You don't get like the darling comments and stuff as much, but I have seen it when you read through the comments that, you know, other people have put on people's posts. There are people sometimes very condescending to women about their opinions, and it's usually one of these lovely, very, you know, strong, capable businesswomen who have shared something really inspiring, and then if you read the stuff underneath, it's like, so it puts you off, I think, being that kind of woman and sharing your thoughts and your opinion when you've got a bit of a platform, because I wouldn't want to sit there and get 10,000 replies that are all derogatory and nasty. And fine if you're being like critical in a positive way, let's build on it and, you know, have a discussion. But yeah, just slamming someone's opinion, I couldn't deal with it. It would send me into a really bad place mentally. I know it would. But I do worry about like kids. Like, how do you feel about your children? Because, you know, 3 of you are parents. Is it what, as in being treated different for their gender, or is it just social media? Or
social media, a lot of it. I think everything really. I just want him to have. I don't want him to have a sheltered or misperception of what reality is. I want him to be out. So I mean, I know it's difficult now, and he's only young, but I mean, when we were kids, we were out playing. I used to get up at 9 o'clock in the morning. I wouldn't be home till tea time. Whereas these days, a lot of kids are in the house and it's all on the computers and stuff. I just want him to enjoy going out up in the woods and getting in trouble, but in a good way. You know, doing the stuff that we used to do. We'd be out all day, and I don't think that reality is going to be for him. I don't think it is. I think it's going to be me picking him up and dropping him off at a friend's house, and they'll sit on the computer all day, or they'll sit at home chatting on the headsets. But again, I want him to have that work ethos. I mean, when I was a kid, I used to go out, probably not the best thing, but we used to go out washing people's cars, cutting grass and all that sort of thing. I want him to have that same mentality, that if he wants money and he wants to earn it, he's got to go out and do it.
That's what I'm trying to do. Because I've got obviously a girl and a boy, and my eldest is Jess, she's 8, and she obviously wants a phone at the minute. So we're in that territory of negotiation at the minute. And but I think for me, I want to be able to emulate and sort of be that role model for her, that if she works hard, she can be whatever she wants to be. So at the minute, she wants to be a WWE wrestler, which of course I'm encouraging. So she's on a fitness plan and doing all this stuff. And my son wants to be a dinosaur. So, you know, we're promoting that as well. So it's opportunity. I think that's the biggest thing for me with my 2, female or male, providing them with the opportunity to do what they want to do. And I think that transpires into the workplace, isn't it? And I think that's what we try to do, is that we want a workforce and a team of people that thrive on opportunity, and we want to be able to give those opportunities regardless of gender or ethnicity or age. It's
merit.
Yeah.
And I think that ultimately it has to come down to merit. And I think hopefully we're creating an environment where the opportunities are there and it can be judged on merit and not judged on anything else. And I think that's all we can try and do, is to try and make sure that everyone's open to the same opportunities and given the same chances, but it's based on how good you are at your job and the values you demonstrate and the work ethic you kind of put in.
It's that age-old adage, isn't it? It's work hard, play hard. If you work hard, you get to play hard as well. Yeah. And it's like you say, it's regardless of who you are or where you are, it's what you do is that matters. Impact you have.
With the stuff we're reflecting, I think we mentioned it in a management meeting the other day, it's celebrating, isn't it? Like you said, we've got, is it a 2-to-1 ratio on our senior leaders board? And I think it's not being afraid to shout about that fact. And if we can persuade people like Jane and yourselves to go in front of the camera, I think it's setting that example, isn't it, for other companies and other people, and kind of being those role models that, you know, outside of the family environment, that kind of stuff. And that goes the same for people like me and Adam as well, is celebrating that fact and promoting that fact as well.
Right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Bunch. Treasures. Thank you very much.